Good morning and welcome to the Curious George Cottage Saturday morning story time. Today we are starting with the first book about Curious George, Cicely G. and the 9 Monkeys. Cicely G. and the 9 Monkeys by H.A. Ray. Here are the names of the 9 monkeys in this book. Mother Pampaloose and Baby Ginny, Curious George, who was clever too, James, who was good, Johnny, who was brave, Arthur, who was kind, David, who was strong, and Punch and Judy, the twins. This is Cicely G. Her whole name is Cicely Giraffe, but she is called Cicely G, or just plain Cicely for short. One day she was very sad because all her family and all her friends had been taken away to a zoo. Cicely G was all alone. She began to cry because she wanted someone to play with. Now, in another place lived a mother monkey called Mother Pamplemousse and 8 little monkeys. They were sad too because some woodcutters had cut down all the trees in their forest, and monkeys have to have trees to live in. One of the little monkeys was called Curious George. He was a clever monkey. He said, "We must pack up at once and go on a journey to find a new home." So they did. They walked and they walked and they walked until they came to the bank of a deep river. They couldn't get across and there wasn't any way around. They didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Ginny, the baby monkey, pointed across to the other bank. There stood Cicely Giraffe. When she saw the monkeys, she stopped crying. "Do you want to get across?" she asked. "Yes, yes," they cried. "Step back then," called Cicely G. Yoop! With one big jump, Cicely's front feet landed on the monkey's side of the bank, and then she stood still. There she is, making a big bridge. Curious George was the first to see that Cicely had made herself into a bridge. He ran across. Then came Johnny, who was a brave monkey, then all the others, one by one. "Thank you, dear Giraffe," shouted George, "and please put your head down a little so that we can talk to you without shouting. That's better. What is your name, and why are you sad?" "My name is Cicely Giraffe, and I am unhappy because I haven't anyone to play with." "Why are you sad?" "We are sad," said George, "because we haven't anywhere to live." "Then why don't you stay with me for a while?" said Cicely. "My house is empty now." "We'd love to," cried all the monkeys at once. "Good," said Cicely, and she smiled for the first time that day. "Now it is bedtime. I'll show you your room, and tomorrow we'll have some lovely games." So she tucked all the 9 monkeys into one giraffe bed, and in a few minutes they were fast asleep. Next morning, after a good night's sleep and a big breakfast, Cicely G said, "Now let's play seesaw. James, you sit on my back." James was a very good monkey and usually had first turn. "George, if you climb on my head, and you, Johnny, sit on my hind feet. That's the way." "Now," they cried. "Off we go." Cicely stood up on her front legs. Up, down, up, down, up, down went the seesaw. After a while, Cicely stopped and took on another load. Everyone had a turn, but baby Ginny got so excited that Mother Pamplemousse was afraid she would fall off. She had to climb down and give her place to James, who got an extra ride. Ginny cried a little, but Arthur, who was very kind, dried her tears and told her that he had an idea for another game she could play. So Arthur whispered something to all the other monkeys. They rushed into the house where they had left their belongings, and in a minute they were back with their skis. "But there isn't any snow for skis," said Cicely G. "Please," said George, "be so kind as to stretch your neck so I can tie your head to the top of that palm tree over there." "I'd be glad to," said Cicely, and she did. Then all the monkeys put on their skis, climbed the tree, and slid down Cicely's back over and over again. Brave Johnny even did stunts. When he jumped, he seemed to be flying. After a while, Cicely's neck got tired, but she was having such a good time that she hardly noticed. "You are a wonderful skier, Johnny," she said. Johnny was so pleased he tried a specially high jump, and bump, down he fell, flat on his nose. Mother Pamplemousse ran to pick him up. "I think it's time to play something else," she said. "Let's find a game that Cicely can play too." That's a tough page. "Yes, yes," cried all the monkeys. Johnny thought very hard because he was such a good monkey that he wanted Cicely to be sure and have fun, too. All at once, he had a wonderful idea. "We'll make some stilts for Cicely G," he cried. Johnny and David, who was a very strong monkey, cut down 2 palm trees. The twins, Punch and Judy, did the sawing. James hammered the nails. George watched and gave advice. When the stilts were done, he proudly carried them to Cicely G and showed her how to use them. Cicely Giraffe was terribly excited. All the monkeys helped, and up, up, up she went, right into the sky. So high, the page isn't big enough to show all of her. She already had long legs. It was very hot the next day, and they all thought it would be just the thing to go to the seashore. After a short walk, they came to the beach, and Mother Pamplemousse thought it would be nice to have a swim before lunch. But Johnny had been thinking. He asked Cicely to put down her head so he could whisper in her ear. Can you guess what he said? He wanted Cicely to be a sailboat, and so Cicely made herself into a sailboat. Johnny was captain. He shouted orders and pulled the ropes. Not so hard, not so hard, cried Cicely. But she was too late. Over they went into the water. Quick, quick, climb on my back, called Cicely Giraffe when Johnny cried for help. In a minute, they were safe on the beach, but Cicely was so wet and cold, they decided to take off her skin and hang it in the sun to dry. It is quite complicated to be a giraffe, said Punch to Judy as they brought Cicely the clothespins. That's pretty silly. Cicely Giraffe had hardly gotten into her skin when a big black cloud came up and hid the sun. Uh-oh, it's going to rain, cried the monkeys. Off they rushed, and back they came, 1, 2, 1, 2, carrying their umbrellas on their shoulders. But the rain didn't start at once, and James thought it would be fun to use the umbrellas for a new game. He called it parachute jumping. Each monkey, one at a time, climbed up on Cicely's head, opened his umbrella, and jumped off. Down they floated. It was such fun they did it hundreds of times. All went well until, all of a sudden, Curious George tipped his umbrella sideways to see something, and thump! Down he fell. When he looked at his broken umbrella, he sat down on the ground to cry. And just at that moment, the rain started. Poor George! Great splashing drops began to fall all around him. Quick, quick, climb up my neck, George, said Cicely. George climbed up and up until he was in the sunshine again, high above the rain clouds. All week long, Cicely and her new friends had great fun. When Sunday came, Cicely was so happy she decided to give a concert to celebrate. The monkeys thought it a splendid idea. Arthur made up a nice song for them all to sing, and George promised to play on the harp. At last they were ready, and George was just starting them off when someone cried, "Fire! Fire! Cicely's house is burning!" The concert stopped almost before it started, but no one knew what to do to put out the fire. "If only we had a ladder, we could throw water on the flames," cried Mother Pamplemousse. "I know what to do," said James. "There's a pump near the house and a hose, and Cicely can be the ladder." Punch and Judy worked the pump, and George climbed up to turn the hose on the fire. James stood on Cicely's back to guide the hose up to George. In a minute the fire was out and Cicely's house was saved. Cicely looked at the wet little monkeys and said, "Dear new friends, I don't know how to thank you. Would you like to stay with me always? It would make me very happy." "Oh, Cicely G!" cried Mother Pamplemousse, Baby Ginny, Curious George, Brave Johnny, and good little James, Kind Arthur, Strong David, and the twins, Punch and Judy, all together. "We'll stay with you forever and ever. And now let's finish our concert." So they took hold of hands, danced around a ring, and sang Arthur's song as loud as they could sing. 9 little monkeys were homeless and in dismay, till Cicely G. Raff had us along to stay. So here in a ring we'll all dance and sing. Cicely, Cicely will never go away. And our next story is Curious George Learns the Alphabet. Here he goes with his pencils and the man with the yellow hat and some paper. Let's see where he's going. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey, but he was always curious. This morning, George was looking at some of his friend's books. They were full of little black marks and dots and lines, and George was curious. What could one do with them? The man with the yellow hat came just in time. "You don't tear a book apart to find out what's in it," he said. "You read it, George. Books are full of stories. Stories are made of words, and words are made of letters. If you want to read a story, you first have to know the letters of the alphabet. Let me show you." The man took a big pad and began to draw. George was curious. "This is an A," the man said. "The A is the first letter of the alphabet." A with the alligator mouth. Now we add 4 feet and a long tail, and the A becomes an alligator with his mouth wide open. The word alligator starts with an A. This is a big A. There's also a small a. All letters come in big and small. This is a small a. It looks like a piece of apple. George knew alligators and apples. You could eat apples. Alligators could eat you if you didn't watch out. B. This is a big B. The big B looks like a bird if we put feet on it, and a tail and a bill. The word bird begins with a B. Birds come in all colors. This bird is blue. George loved to watch the birds. This is a small bee. It could be a bee. This bee is busy buzzing around a blossom. The bee's body has black and yellow stripes. George kept away from bees. They might sting, and that would be bad. C. This is a big C. We will make it into a crab, a big crab with a shell and feet and 2 claws. This is a small C. The small C is like a big C, only smaller. So it becomes a small crab. It's cute. Crabs live in the ocean. They can swim or run sideways and backwards. Crabs can be funny, but they can also pinch you. You now have 3 letters, George, the man said. A, B, and C. With these 3 letters, you can make a word, the first word. You can read yourself. The word is C-A-B. Little word, or little letters, C-A-B. You know what a cab is. I once took you for a ride in a cab, remember? And now let's draw the next letter. D. The big D could be dinosaur. There are no live dinosaurs today. They have died out. Those you see in museums are dummies. George had seen a dinosaur in a museum once. The small d looks like a dromedary. A dromedary is a camel with 1 hump. Riding on a dromedary can make you dizzy because it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. E is on elephant. He is eating his evening meal. Eggplants. George loved elephants. The small E could be the ear of a man or the ear of a monkey. People's ears and monkeys' ears look very much alike. F, the big F, is a fireman fighting a fire. Never fool the fire department or you go to jail, and that's no fun. The small F is a flower. George's friend was fond of flowers. George preferred food. The big G is a goose. Goose starts with a G like George. The small g is a goldfish. He is in a glass bowl. D-A-D-E-D-B-A-D. Bag, cage, feed, bed. Now you know 7 letters, George, said the man. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. With these letters, we can already make quite a few words. I've written some of them down. You read them while I get you your lunch. There they are. It seems the only word you can read is bad, said the man when he came back. I think we've had enough for one morning. I'll feed you now and then take your nap. After your nap, we'll go on with our letters. George thought it would make a good cape. The big H is a house. It stands on a hill behind a hedge. George's home used to be a jungle. Now he lives in a house. The small h is a horse. He is happy because he has heaps of hay. George had his own horse, a hobby horse. The big I is just a long line going straight down. It does not look like much. It could be an icicle. The small I is a line with a dot on top. It could be an iguana. An iguana is a sort of lizard. Iguanas don't like ice. They like the warm sunshine. So does George. The big J is a jaguar. Jaguars live in the jungle. George knew jaguars. He had lived in the jungle once. The small j is a jack-in-the-box. George had a jack-in-the-box as a toy. He just loved to make it jump. The big K is a big kangaroo called Katie. The small k is a small kangaroo. He is Katie's kid. The big L is a lion. He is lucky. He is going to have leg of lamb for lunch, and he loves it. The small L is a lean lady. She is strolling along a lake licking a lollipop. George liked lollipops. The big M is a mailman. His name is Mr. Miller. He brings a letter. Maybe it's for me, thinks George. The small m is a mouse. He is munching mints. And do you know what else it is, said the man to George. M is the 13th letter of the ABCs. The whole alphabet has only 26 letters, so 13 is just half of it. You can make lots of words with these letters. Why don't you try? Here's a pad and a pencil. George started to think of words. Then he wrote them down. It was fun to make words out of letters. Let me see, said the man. Ball, milk, cake, ham, jam, egg, lime, feed, kid. That's very good. But what on earth is dog or geology or lim? There are no such things. Just any letters do not make words, George. Well, let's look at some new letters now. The big N is a napkin standing on a dinner plate. It looks neat. George had seen napkins folded that way in the restaurant when he was a dishwasher. The small n is a nose in the face of a man. He has a new blue necktie on and is nibbling noodles. The big O is a big ostrich, and the small o is a small ostrich, of course. Ostriches eat odd objects. One ostrich once tried to eat a bugle that belonged to George. The big P is a big penguin, and the small p is a small penguin. These penguins live near the South Pole. They use their flappers as paddles. George knew penguins from the zoo. The big Q is a quail. Quails have short tails. You must keep quiet if you want to watch quails. They are quite shy. The small Q is a quarterback. A quarterback has to be quick. George was quick. He would qualify for quarterback. And now get your football, George, said the man. It will do you good to play a little before we go on with your letters. George knew how to play the game. He knew how to carry the ball and how to take a three-point stance and how to get ready for the kickoff. He was a fine halfback, too, and he could make a short pass or recover a fumble. Good game, said the man, but time's up now. Back to the alphabet. The big R is a rabbit. Some rabbits are white with red eyes. Rabbits love radishes. George loved rabbits. He had one as a pet. The small R is a rooster. The rooster crows when the sun rises. Two roosters will start a rumpus. They really can get rough. The big S is a big snail, and the small s is a small snail. Snails are slow. They sneak into their shells when they are scared of something. George thought snails looked silly. The big T is a table. The table is set for two. It is tea time for tea. It is time for tea. George did not care for tea, but he liked toast. The small T is a tomahawk. George had a toy tomahawk. It was a tiny one. He took it along when he played outside. Now it's time for a snack, said the man. Run over to the baker, George, and hand him this note. Then come right back with the donuts, 1 dozen of them, and no tricks, please. George was curious. He looked at the note. The man had written 1 dozen donuts. Maybe he could write something on it too. How about writing 10 instead of 1? He had just learned the T. First a T, then an E, then an N. Said the baker. 10 dozen donuts is quite a lot, but that's what the note says. We need an extra big bag for them. Why, George, cried the man. Then he saw the note. Well, that comes from teaching the alphabet to a little monkey. And I told you no tricks. You may not eat any donuts now, George. Put them back in the bag and let's go on with the letters. The big U is a big umbrella standing upright. The umbrella handle is also like a U. George knew how to use an umbrella. The small U is a small umbrella. When it is raining, umbrellas are useful, but you must keep under the umbrella unless you want to get wet. George thought rain was a nuisance. The big V is a big Valentine. For George from the man with the yellow hat. And the small V, to George with love, is a small Valentine. George loved Valentines. He got several Valentine cards every year. One card came from Nevada. The big W and the small w are whiskers, big ones and small ones. A walrus has whiskers. Some men have whiskers, and cats have whiskers. George did not have whiskers, but he was curious how he would look if he did. He's drawing himself some. The next letter of the alphabet is X. The big X and the small x look alike. Only one is big and one is small, just like the big W and the small w, or the V, or the U, or the S, and some of the other letters. But, said the man, there are few words that start with X, and they don't look like an X. except for one, and that is Xmas. Santa stands for Xmas. There is only one Santa, so we need only one picture. George thought Xmas was exciting. The big Y is a big yak, and the small y is a small yak. He is still young. Yaks live in Tibet. If you haven't seen any yaks yet, you may find one at the zoo. The big Z is a big zebra, and the small z is a small zebra. The zebras are zipping along with zest. And do you know what? Said the man. Z is the last letter. Now you know all the 26 letters of the alphabet, and now you may have the donuts. The end. That's a good thing to do with that many donuts. And now you know some of the 26 letters too. Thank you for coming to Storytime today. We'll see you next week.